a lot of the questions that humanity has, or they speculate of, is there life after death? What does that look like? Where do we go? Where were we before we were born? Well, you have the ability here right now to see that and access that. And I've done that. I've taught many people how to do that as well. And it's no longer a theory or this or that. It's theoretical for individuals that haven't experienced it yet. But there has been a documented case, you could say through history as well, with near-death studies, where people have studied near-death experiences, and it's a recurring theme of what happens. And then doing controlled states like this, where you could consciously lower the heart rate, lower the electromagnetic field of the body to where you just come out. And when you come out, you will see that which every near-death experiencer explains as well, seeing passed away loved ones, seeing what they call records of things, your past lives, seeing your soul for what it is, like literally coming out, seeing your soul as a physical thing, and also seeing your physical body on the bed or wherever it is that you're practicing. And you instantly realize that that body is not you. This is very important for people that are first listening to this, because they feel that this is reality. This physical life is reality, and this is physical, and this is all that there is. And it's very, very real. How could there be anything more real than this? But we need to understand scientifically, we're only accessing like 1% of the frequency bands of light spectrum. So the physical brain is only decoding a very limited aspect of the full reality of all that exists, the multidimensionality of everything that's out there. And we call this real. But then when you come out of the body, you access the other 99% that we can't see. And that's what your soul has access to. So when you come out of the body, you're accessing the 99% of reality that is invisible to you physically here. And that is everything that you could possibly imagine is there. It's past the limitations of the physical body. You step into the soul. And that's what an out-of-body experience is, a true out-of-body state. And you could say there's many different deviations to this, like accessing thought forms or dimensional spaces or potential time. Because again, that's not airy-fairy, or it's not way out there. It's actually a very, very practical thing when you understand what I said before, 1% versus the 99% of the frequency. Time is not linear, and you could see how these things work when you're out of the body. So that's what an out-of-body state is, which is what did it actually feel like when I first came out. Now, when we go to when I was controlling the state, when I was trying to get control over it because they were all over the place, sleep paralysis coming out of my body, no idea how to control it. The first night where I consciously said, okay, I'm going to try to do this at will, and I achieved it. There's a difference when it's happening to you on accident, where things are happening accidentally. But then when you consciously bring it on, in your body, you feel your whole body vibrating, and you're in bed, and your whole body shutting down, you're vibrating, you feel the tingles all through you, you cannot move, you're completely paralyzed, it feels like you're not even breathing. And you're in that state. And you switch between fear and non-fear constantly. And this is why I'm so big on getting rid of fear, because you feel like you're dying. And so that moment that I got rid of the fear, I was like, I don't even care if I die today. I'm going to push through this. My body 100% shut down. I felt my soul starting to levitate just like inches above my body. I looked back and I saw my physical body there, and it was instant like, holy shit, this is 100% real. What I thought life after death would be when you die is nothing what people think, or nothing what I thought, because I thought that I lose my sense of self, that I lose my personality, I lose the thoughts that I have, but I was the exact same person. And every single time I'm the exact same person, because our spark never changes in that way. We are always our individual self. You know, we always keep that sense of perception of we are a soul. That was the most incredible experience that I've had, you know, and from that point, I spent a very long time trying to disprove myself, because I was like, okay, well, I proved that that's it. And then now I have control over this, and I'm consciously bringing this on. And at this point, because it's so real, sometimes I'm thinking, okay, this is a hallucination. There's no way that I'm doing this. No way. I was very skeptical, even though I was already proving it to myself. I must be sleepwalking. Something must be happening that I could disprove that which I'm doing. I set up tests for myself. I set up cameras in the room. I set up whiteboard experiments where I'd have someone write something down. I would see people physically doing things in real life that was impossible for me to see, but I was seeing them physically, even to the point where I was with a friend and they said, stop spying on us, because I was trying to prove this. And I proved, okay, well, there's no way. It's impossible. There's no way that I could be seeing these things if this is not real. And then I've had a group of people from across the world. I'm like, okay, well, this is real. All right, let's verify it for them. Let's verify it for other people, because they would have the same doubt that I did. And so they're leaving their body. I'm like, okay, let's connect with a friend across the world. You write something on a piece of paper, stick it on your bedside table. Connect with that person energetically and get in tune with them and see if you could see what they wrote. And there's an overwhelming success rate when people break down the barrier that this is possible and they start to see that. And it's like, well, how could I possibly see something from across the world and it be true if this out of body state and what you're talking about?
Are there certain things in the environment that help or hurt the probability of it happening?
There's a few things that prevent it from happening. One of them is fear. Fear is the big one, because I didn't really understand why fear would cut you off from it or stop the experience. But every single time you're in fear, the only thing I could tell you is that the moment that you try to leave the body and you're trying to consciously shut down the body, you're trying to put yourself, think about it, the deepest meditation possible. So when you have this anxiety, it sort of keeps you awake. And that stops it. The other one is disbelief in yourself. And I know that sounds very corny, right? I'm totally aware that sounds cheesy, disbelief in yourself. But disbelief in yourself and your potential will also cut this off, because what you believe in also shapes your reality. Okay, this is why the placebo is real as well. But if you could have enough belief in yourself that this is possible, and it's not just for a selected few of gifted individuals, that it's possible for every individual, and people are sharing their successes, then that breaks down the perceived limitations that was never really there. And that helps. So those are the two things that really prevent this. And the third one is going to be obviously like coffee or anything that you're stimulating your body to be awake, because the goal is to shut down.
So this is available for everybody, and we can train and practice. And what becomes available for people? How does it change their life or their sense of purpose by exploring outer body experiences?
Because a lot of people will get to the point, well, what's the point? I'm here physically. So what's the point of leaving the body? The thing is that we are only perceiving 1% of reality. And the moment that we realize that the other 99% governs the 1%, then you realize accessing the truth of who you are before you came here is the ultimate fulfillment of your life, because everybody here is searching for something, and they search it through being a dancer, a musician, or what have you. But really what they're searching for is that connection back home, which is love, which is unconditional love. And they're trying to express that in every aspect of their life here. And to really understand who you are, connect back to it, is to understand who you actually are from the very beginning before you were here. And so that's the first part. The second part is it helps awaken a lot of things within your physical body. A lot of these dormant things that are suppressed within the physical body starts to awaken and activate again. We have 13-strand DNA. They say, all these DNA strands are junk DNA. They're not junk. They help turn on intuitive abilities, telepathy, interacting with all of the multidimensionality of this space that we're in, that we can't see, but you can start to tap into that and see it. This is why back in history, they were so focused on the pineal gland, of activating that, because it allows you to awaken certain things physically and also perceive reality at a heightened awareness and increase the electromagnetic field of your physical body, which is just to interact with the whole electromagnetic field of all of reality.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to more consciously access the truth of their being, their essence?
It's mainly due to the suppression of indoctrination of being told that you can't, or certain institutions or education system, etc., that suppresses and puts a cap and puts a limit. There was an experiment done. I want to say this. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was something with fleas or something. They put it in a jar. They could jump so high, but they put a cap. They put them in a jar and they closed the lid. And I'll just say fleas, they started to jump up. They sensed, okay, I'm hitting a wall. I'm hitting a wall. And then all the fleas were programmed. Okay, that's the limit. They took the lid off and they would jump, but they would never jump past that lid mark, even though they were capable of doing it. So this is what's happening here. We have had a lid on us and we think that this is the ceiling. We can't go any farther, but that lid is off and people are unaware of it. And they could jump so much farther past that lid to access so much more things that we're capable of. And people are actually doing it. And that's amazing.
Just hearing about that it's possible kind of breaks the illusion of our own perceived limitations, which I think is exciting for humanity and our potential. So in your experience, what happens at the moment of death? I know people love talking about this, exploring. What have you seen? What do you know?
The moment of death, what will happen? When the body starts to die, let's just say 3 months, or actually let's go a year. Let's go a year. When someone's about to die, they inherently know, their soul knows. And so this is where you'll see in that year time before the final crossover that they start reaching out to loved ones, saying goodbye without really saying goodbye, but catching up. Yeah, because inherently our soul knows all things. We here right now physically, because our soul's in our physical body, we know all things. To say otherwise is to say that you are not connected to the source of all things. And because we are connected to the source of all things, that means that we know everything if we connect back to it. But when the body's shutting down and dying in that year process, the soul and all the mental constructs of this mind start to break down. And then the soul stepping in fully, taking over and accessing, it knows without knowing. In terms of the mind doesn't know, but the soul knows. Then as it gets closer to death, you'll start to begin to see that certain beings start to make contact in dreams. Their abilities start to turn online. They call it lucid dreaming, or they had a dream, but very vivid dreams where they're seeing angels, angelic beings that they don't know coming to them because they're preparing for that meeting point. And at the point of death, what typically happens, if the person isn't in fear, but what typically happens is that they'll just die. The heart rate will stop. They'll come out of their body. They will look at their physical body and all their loved ones standing around them. They'll be all crying, but they will be like, okay, I'm still here, but you can't see me. And it's just because of that light spectrum. But then they will be greeted by all the beings. People call them spirit guides, but they're just good friends. They're good friends, angels, what have you. They'll be greeted by those beings to transition them to the infinite beyond, which is where they came from before they were born. And when they're there, they start to remember all these beings that were there. They're what they call angels. They start to remember them by their name. They're showing how it was made, this whole place. They're showing the records of themselves. They're showing their life. They're getting a life review. I was given a life review. It's the reason why I'm doing this. It was essentially where I was showing, it was a very short one. And it was with my uncle. And I was being shown all of these places where I withheld love in my life. So I was seeing everything from the beginning. I was seeing everything where I withheld love, little tiny things where I withheld love, and it brought me to my knees in pain. Like I was actually brought me to my knees, and I realized at that point, the greatest pain that you will experience on the other side is things that you do outside of love, because pain exists when love is absent. No pain, no suffering exists when love is present. And then I asked, I said, well, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Because now, okay, I'm leaving my body. I've finally seen my Uncle Bob that has passed away. What do I do? And he said, okay, do what they consider the great work. And I know that's a cheesy word, but that's what was told to me. Do what they consider the great work. I said, what's that? He said, wake people up to the other side, because when they wake up to this place, they will wake up to absolutely everything. And that couldn't be any further from the truth, because that is the absolute truth. Because everybody here, if they could wake up to where they were before they were born, They wake up to it all because they wake back up to unconditional love. And unconditional love is freedom. And then they realize that all the things based here in control is not freedom, nor is it love. And they do not support that. They'll stop supporting those things and stop supporting those systems.
Beautiful. So it's like this realignment back to love, and that our life really, would you say, is really in service to that?
It's not necessarily in service of that, as it's something outside of you, because that automatically will put you in a place where then you are being controlled. Service to that outside of me. Now you're in this controlled, okay, I need to serve this. But it's in service to yourself, because the highest version of that unconditional love that I talk about, when you cross over, when you're dead and you're there permanently, the freedom comes from that love that you feel. Isn't necessarily, yes, it's from the source of things, but it's from you finally being able to release yourself from all of this baggage, all of this, I have to be this, all of these borders, these masks that we place on ourselves. And all that just falls away. And then we're finally able to just be ourselves with no limitation nor any restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And that we finally go, wow, I'm free. That's that love frequency. So it's more in service to you being your authentic self with no limitations or having any mask at all. That's what we should be in service to, because then that reflects outward to everybody, because you cannot share anything outwardly of that which is not inherently within yourself that you're being.
And what would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about the afterlife?
That you will go to hell, there's punishment, there's judgment, pain and suffering. You're going to be soul trapped. You're going to be looped back here. Those are big, big misconceptions, because if I go into the first one, which is you are going to be judged. So a lot of people have this fear right now that they're going to be judged through the things that they've done in their life. And you cannot have unconditional love for the judgment. That statement that I just made will stand for the end of time, because it's truth, and I know that may sound arrogant, but you just can't have judgment when you're crossing over to the other side and it's in a state of unconditional love. That's a misconception. The second one too, what I said before, is this fear of you are going to be punished because of judgment, or you're going to go to hell. And the thing is that doesn't necessarily exist in the way that people think hell is. Can you experience hell on the other side? Sure. But that hell is going to be due to your own fear. And when you finally break out of that fear, you will realize that the doors to, you could say, the heavens and the other side completely open back up to you, because you're self-manifesting your own prison when you're in this fear state.
Kind of like on this plane as well.
It's like someone that has all the pleasures in this life. They have all the riches in this life. They have all the money, whatever. But because they're not love within themselves, they always find something to complain about, even though they have everything physically that you could possibly imagine or want here. But they're not it themselves. So it's like always there's something wrong with something. It's same thing, And the forced reincarnation stuff that people talk about is a massive misconception, because nothing could touch or control or entrap your soul unless you believe that you could be entrapped or imprisoned. And then you give your power away to be entrapped in a prison because you believe it to be so, because you cannot have ultimate expression of freedom with a limitation. And you, the soul, is the source of all things like every other soul. That means that you have authority over creation itself like every other soul.
And so for people that are new to some of this work, and I know you talk about the construct, can you share with us just in simple terms what this is and how it relates to the 12 realms?
First, I want to say this. We've had all throughout history, people say this, from, the book of Enoch to in biblical things, they say the 3 heavens of creation. Some say the 7 heavens. I'm not sure where that's written, but it's something along those lines. You go in Hindu mythology, they even talk about the 12 layers of creation. Egyptian texts, they also describe these heavens and creations as well, certain kingdoms. Now, I had no idea of this stuff. At the time when I was leaving my body, I had to come back after seeing it like, well, what is this? And I started to research certain things and get validation of, this is all over the place. So what I saw when I was out of here is I saw this place as what we call the universe, as a created construct with multiple layers of kingdoms and creations within it. And this is where we go into the multidimensionality. And so right now we are within a certain heaven, a kingdom at a certain frequency band that we're perceiving this physical life. But there's multiple different layers of all these kingdoms and heavens that are just stacked on different frequency bands that are actually all here, but just not visible to us. And that's what I saw. Like I saw what I call the third kingdom, which is very symbolic to, you'll get to a lot of the structures there that you see now in the pyramids, halls of Mente, stuff like that. That's what I saw. I saw that when I originally saw the fifth creation, it was like cathedral buildings. And I said, okay, this is what heaven's like. This has to be heaven. So this is heaven. And over time, I realized, well, actually, every single one of these layers of creation are just different versions of heaven. They're all different versions. I've seen all of these multi-layers of creation. Science is trying to search out of trying to find the edge of the universe, And when you're out, it's like a foundation that's fixed, and it's like a snow globe. But when you enter it, you're actually entering all of these different layers. It's a multi-dimensional creation. And then I also saw that there's many different creations or constructs like that on the other side, that this is just one out of an infinite amount of them. And they're all made from what we as souls think of, because we as souls on the other side are infinite beings, infinite creator beings. And what we think of, we manifest that into a creation. If you could find the end of your imagination, then you found the end to creation itself, and you can't.
The way that I used to context it, I'm just curious your thoughts. I used to context awakening and spirituality, or enlightenment and spirituality. Enlightenment meaning the void, the truth of who and what we already are. And in the spiritual realm, sometimes I feel like there's distractions, and it's creative and dimensions. It's all one, but sometimes it can be a distraction of just playing in dimensions rather than questioning identity of who and what we really are. Have you explored anything around that?
When I was seeing all of these different levels of creation, I thought to myself, okay, well, that means that they are higher than me. They're greater than me. This is what I'm thinking at the time, in perceiving them as something grander and greater than me. They're an angel. I look up to them. They are just characters, souls from outside of this universal construct that we're in, just like you and me, that stepped in here and said, okay, I'm going to play this character. But when you're outside of this, completely outside of this snow globe construct, what we're in, we are all equal as souls, able to make anything that we desire. But within here, you even go back to the near-death experience stuff. What do they experience? Well, yeah, they see all these things. They get a life review. Sometimes they may view them as greater and grander, but then that's also revealed to them as well.
Who am I? What am I? And I'm curious, I know you've in your work talk about the void, and I just would love to hear any of your exploration or, yeah.
This is going to be probably a convoluted answer to it. But if someone actually sits with it, then you'll realize what I'm saying. The moment that you try to search for who you are, you're trying to search for it, you'll never find it. You'll never find it when you try to look for it. Because who you are you cannot search for it or look for it. It's something that you inherently already are. When you stop looking, you find it. In the pursuit of searching, you lose it. It's almost like this. When you look at trees growing, trees grow, they have a blueprint, they grow. Sometimes the tree will fall, something's in the way, so a tree will grow this way or whatever. And you have all these different trees that grow slightly different. A tree does not search for or ask, what am I? Or try to define it. A tree is just being a tree. And no matter what comes in its path, it just moves around it. So essentially, the moment that we stop searching for it, we'll realize that everything that we are searching for, we actually already are it.
This is the most important conversation to have. And my favorite quote is from St. Francis of Assisi. He says, what you're looking for is what's looking. And so often we're looking for something. That's why you're saying the more you search for something, the less you discover that you already are it, because it's this outsourcing versus like you turning back into what is looking. And I think for many years I was in spiritual search. I was searching for myself and realizing that very thing of like, oh, I was looking for a concept or something rather than the space, the void, the backdrop of awareness that is. So yeah, I just think it's a potent inquiry and conversation.
Yeah, not realizing that you literally with that searching, you're the one actually searching for it. You're it. Like it's a loop.
Even thinking of an observer, it's like, is it an observer or is it observing? It's a deep inquiry that is worth having.
This is why even, when you have controlled states where you're consciously leaving the body, this will answer it for you. Because see, people that haven't done that consciously, deliberately, they're still trying to find answers to, okay, well, who am I when I die? You're the same person when you die. You're the same person, but you're free. And so that searching is like, okay, it's already here.
That was like, well, if I died, how would I know I died? Because then I would be alive. There was something that's alive if I knew I died, right? So something prior to the idea of death. So who dies, which is another deep inquiry. From your point of view, then, do you experience Earth as a simulation?
When people think of simulation, they think of something of a place of not real. Okay, so this is not real. And when you view a simulation theory in that way, that we're living within a simulation, as this is not real, etc., then that's where it's incorrect. But if you view a simulation as just a simulation where we play a game, then that is correct. Because everything that we are experiencing is real. This construct is 100% real. So if you switch the way that people perceive a simulation in that way, that it still is all real, then you could say when you step out of this universe, like I was talking about before, and you're seeing all of these different creations everywhere, that every creation in infinity is a simulation. Okay. So replace the word simulation with a created construct universe. And that would be the right path to go down. Because, we start to go into, people think that, okay, well, I'm not real in a simulation. I could be programmed. And if I'm programmed, then I don't have a soul, and all that's fear. Yeah, it spirals down to fear. It's not true.
What experience would they have if they truly understood their power, if they understood it more clearly?
If people understood who they truly are, then they would have no more fear, nor would they be able to be controlled. Because all that we have now within our life in terms of suppression is just people and things trying to control us from limiting thoughts that people place on us. But when you realize who you are, all that goes away. All of it goes away.
It's almost like we start to wake up from the limitations of our own mind, and then we're not so controlled by the limitations of other people's mind, the one mind. And so we're waking up from the mind into the truth of who we are, into the power that is always in our presence in the moment. We've had a lot of people on the podcast talk about how we as souls chose to come here on Earth. And I'm curious, from your point of view, if that's true, why would we choose Earth School that's so challenging?
Everybody makes the decision to come here. That is correct. Even if you're unaware of it, you still make a decision. Imagine for a moment that you are on the other side and you are in the infinite version of yourself. There's no limitations placed on you, nothing at all. Everything that you think instantly is there in front of you. You're also bathed in unconditional love constantly because you're free. That unconditional love is freedom. So if you can imagine that is your eternity, 24/7, even though there's no time, to experience the opposite of that gives you a certain perceptual wisdom that would have never been birthed unless it was experienced. So the moment that you step out of all infinite possibility of pretty much you as a god or whatever, goddess or whatever you want to define it as, the moment you step out of that into a limiting creation, you automatically, the moment that you experience that, you become more greater and grander than what you were before you even came into here. The moment you taste that limit, it's a illusion of separation. When you return back home, you even become more loving, if you can imagine that, than what you were before you entered this place.
That contrast always teaches and gives us more appreciation as well. And I think helps us learn and evolve. You've said that Earth is moving towards completion as more people awaken to who they really are. Can you share more about what you meant by that?
Well, this was something that I was shown at 16. So we need to go back to there. And this is actually very, very good, because you'll see all through what's happening now is all part of that. Part of what I've seen since 16. 16, I was showing that every single soul here without question becomes free. That this whole cycle of what we're living in, of control and suppression, is no more. I was showing that what people call ascension happens. What people in certain communities of the revealing of all truth. You go into the political thing, all that was happening. So I was showing this for a very, very long time ago, and I was also showing things in my life that I'm doing right now. Places I would be, people I would meet, and all of it has happened. And I'm always big on when I state this, that I don't want to put people into hope, and people have already heard me say that before, so I'm not going to go deep on that. And I know that we are at the point of the revealing of all truth for all of humanity. And I've said this like 2 years ago on interviews as well. And here we are with all of these files being released to everybody. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But every single soul is going to become free. All of the systems built on controlling somebody falls. And what comes from that, you could say, is civil unrest. But it's not civil unrest in the way that people think it, basically trying to kill people and etc. It's civil unrest for the freedom of all humanity. And then what happens from there is that everybody returns back to love. I was showing, and you fit this into whatever belief system that you have, but I just need to say it as I was showing it. But I saw and was showing that all of the 12 heavens that I talk about, realms, kingdoms, whatever you want to call them, I was showing that they actually open again, and that everything in terms of contact of races actually come to here again, from the angels, from all of these races that we call extraterrestrial, which are not really extraterrestrials. You could say a mermaid is an extraterrestrial being. They exist. You look up the documentary, The Mermaid's Found, or something like that. The guy was, all of his research was destroyed, but the documentary's there. But I was showing that everything that we were, in terms of these entities, these beings, return here. A lot of the things that we see now as UFOs or stars, some of them are of these higher, what we would perceive as higher, but those beings. So I know that all of that happens, and at the end of that, there's a big celebration, because what returns to all humanity is 100% complete freedom. All of the technology that has been suppressed, there's so many different patents out there of free energy, or energy devices. You could say that reaches a certain point where you would call it free energy. Showing that all this stuff is showing, and it's all happening already right now. In terms of, Trump just not too long ago said that he's going to do basically said to Congress that he's going to release all of the UAP and UFO stuff, or telling Congress to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We are in the greatest and last finales of this place. And that's not fearful. That's not like an end or doomsday, whatever. If I could give you context, let's go into the past. You go into the Mayan civilizations, you go into what people call the Moria, or whatever you want to call it. We have proof that there was a very intelligent ancient civilization here in the past. And then all of a sudden, they're all gone. Where did they go? A lot of them went to all of these other places. To what I'm talking about, these different levels of creation itself. So this has already happened before, the opening and the closure, etc. And it's going to happen again. And that's what I was showing at 16. And it's all coming to that cycle in time, in a very, very positive way. People could take this however they want to take it, but I'm very, 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 very stern in that knowing. Based off everything that I've seen so far. There's going to be so much more releases of information Now, I'm going to PG this a lot, but there's going to be so much more information that's released that will put people into disbelief, but it's still all true, and it's to help show people, it's to help return them back to love. Because the closer that you get to the source of light, you could say, let's just say the light is love and the truth, the bigger the shadow is going to become, and you see everything of what love is not, and that's what's being shown.
Yeah, it's a time of revealing everything that's been suppressed and controlled. And I think it's a lot of people are in freeze, a lot of people are in shock. And my hope is that this is in service to a greater awakening, a greater healing for humanity. And I'm hearing that from you, which is very hopeful.
When you understand how energy works, how thought forms work, and again, this is, you're just gonna have to take my word for it, unless you see what I'm talking about. But hopefully by just listening to what I'm saying, you could be like, okay, that feels right, or that doesn't feel right. When we think of something, we put that into the field. It's like the internet, the field. You can't see the internet, but our thought forms are basically like that. We can't see it, but it's still there in the field. Now, you could give a thought form. If you keep on thinking that, you could make that a very, very physical thing in terms of outside of your visual light spectrum when you see it. So the more energy you feed it, the more it becomes, in a way of saying it, but it's not necessarily true, but you give it even more consciousness itself, its own soul, even though that's the only way I could explain it. Now, when you have certain people that are aware of the spiritual nature, and they are in positions of power, and this is where you go into the music industry, et cetera, and some of the releases of documents. Now, the reason why what they're doing, and the reason why they're doing it, is because they have put energy into a thought form, and that thought form has turned into a physical spirit, you could say. So a spirit is of a thought form, it's a memory. So when you collectively, they put energy into one thing, let's say what they're doing, then that thought form has the ability to then influence in also the collective internet as well, the field of things. And that just so happens to be control, suffering, pain, all that stuff. So we currently have the physical body, the soul, and the spirit. The soul is the source of all things. That's connected to the source. It's connected to the infinite. It's connected to the infinite love. It is what makes all things possible. And when we come into this physical body, we have thoughts, and we have a spirit, and the spirit is the memory of this physical experience, and our thought forms is also that as well. And so they're putting these thought forms out into the field of things, creating these negative demonic spirits, which for the unaware influences other people because they're unaware. But when you realize who you are, a thought form can never touch a soul unless you believe it to be so. And when you start hating on that thought form, when you hate it, think about what they're doing. They're projecting control, hatred, fear. You give it more power, and it ripples back to all of the individual souls within this physical body that thought it and gave it power to begin with. You give them power as well. So the only way to fix it is that when you send unconditional, unfiltered love to that thought form, that spirit, which then will also return that spirit back to love and ripple back to the very creator that thought it to begin with. Very PG version of explaining it, but just to give context of why certain things are done.
We had a cosmologist on the podcast also who was saying when there is war, so for example, that breaks out, there's also higher chances of earthquake. And so it's similar to what you're saying, is like when people are collectively in stress, it's adding to this energetic field that we're all influenced by. And so what I'm hearing you say is we have power to shift how we're relating to, or get what we're giving our energy and power to.
This is why it's very important when you become aware of things to project into the field of everybody interviews like this, the power that they actually have. All of us, every single one of you listening to this, everybody has the power to influence this very reality that we live in. And in your disbelief that we can't also gives powers to the ones that know that they can, and they're influencing you to make their own control systems to control you.
What truth about the existence of reality do you think would be the greatest disruption if people genuinely understood? What do you think would really help people?
Death is not real, and that there is nothing, not one thing to fear at all. That one thing, because if people realize that after everything that we've already talked about, there's no control because there's no fear within you anymore. And that's coming from experience. I have to be honest here. Like, I've had a lot of fear from the out of body stuff. I'm coming out of my body. I'm like, I'm dead. Like, of all this unnecessary fear. And I realized when I got rid of the fear in the out of body, that all of these thought forms that I was trying to explain to you before that I was having actually have no control over me. And I was thinking that they did, and they could touch my soul. So I realized, okay, well, do whatever you want. And I realized that they can't. Nothing could touch your soul. So I realized that fear even controls your soul. And then, I'm going to be honest as well, physical fears that I had. Physical things, of certain things in my life. I had this fear and that and the other, like we all have. And I said, wait a second. Well, that's a contradiction. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, Darius, that's a contradiction. How could you say, me thinking to myself, how could you say, okay, you have no fear on the other side. You know that that's the truth, but yet you're bringing fear here within your physical life. And it's disharmony within myself. And I realized, okay, I actually don't care. All of the fears that would come up naturally within me, I would say, I do not care, because I know no matter what, I'm returning back to home. And while I'm here, I will do everything in my power to do things in a loving way, do things in a truthful way, do things in integrity. That's the truth, that's honestly the truth. If you lose fear, it frees everything. Every fear that you have stems from loss of something.
Like, I won't get what I want, or I'll lose what I have. That's essentially the definition of fear. Yeah, loss.
When you grab onto the material life here of just trying to find the joy here, it is quite literally like water. Because even though you could experience joy here, it's not necessarily coming from the things that you're trying to grab physically. It's coming from within you, which is back home. So when you try to grab it here, you're just grabbing water that's slipping right through your fingers.
And that's the teaching, and that's the teaching of like, oh, well, what's here before I go looking for it? What's already here? Who am I? What am I?